Hello, and welcome to the SaWGuY Podcast.
Like scary movies. What's your favorite scary movie?
Here's Johnny.
We'll tear your soul apart.
The boogeyman is real, and you found him.
Game over, man. Game over.
What do you want?
I want to hear you scream. Drop the prime time, bitch!
Welcome to the SaWGuY Podcast. As always, I'm the SaWGuy, bringing you episode number 18 on chapter 1 and 2 of the Insidious franchise. Oh man, I love freaking Insidious. If you have never seen this movie, I highly recommend actually seeing it. It's done by the creators of the Saw franchise. We all have heard of this franchise, right? And it's done by Leigh Whannell, who's the writer, James Wan, who did the directing. There's speculation saying that they both collaborated on the story and then a little bit of directing, but it is what it is, right? But anyways, the whole story with Insidious, it's basically about, I would go as far as say it's a very good supernatural film, very different and very odd, because even though it's a supernatural film, it doesn't involve stuff with the Ouija boards like your normal typical movie, I would go as far as say this franchise is the modern day Exorcist. Honestly. I know I'm getting all pissed off, like comments. What the hell are you talking about? You're crazy. Well, no, I'm not crazy, and here's why. I'll get to it. But first, for the viewers out here that haven't seen the Insidious movie, I'll break it down to you, part 1 and 2, real quick. The whole story follows this normal family. It's basically a wife, husband, he has 2 boys, and they just had a baby girl, and, obviously their baby girl's still a baby. So they move into this house, and, they basically, what I liked about it, they kept it real life, it's just, everything's all chaotic. The kids are running around, shit's falling apart, there's, boxes everywhere. I mean, the normal, typical, when you move shit. You never know what you have until you fucking move, And, well, anyways, the wife, Rose Byrne, she plays a character named Renee, the wife. She starts noticing little things are out of place, like books are knocked down, boxes are out of place, she can't find her musical notes, and, she thinks nothing of it, right? The story goes on, and basically you figure out that, how the boys are, and it follows the boy, Dalton. And basically Dalton, he has this imagination of wanted to be a superhero. He flies away, then he starts seeing things, and they never really talk about it until later on in the next few scenes where they have your normal typical family dinner. Well, I don't think they had the dinner, but I know they do your normal typical family things like, tuck him in bed, things like that, be careful, because he was in the attic playing, he fell and got hurt, and he said something fell and hit him on the head. Well, anyways, he goes to sleep. Next day they try to follow it like normal, and Dalton doesn't wake up. So they flip the fuck out, which is normal for any parent, and they go to the hospital, and the hospital can't figure out what the fuck is wrong. Basically, he's in a self-induced coma, but not really in a coma. He's just asleep, and he won't wake up. And doctors can't do anything. So they break it down to Josh and Renee that, hey, we can't do anything. It's something out of our hands. So they basically bring him home, and they put him on a feeding tube, they monitor his vitals, all that basic stuff. Well, he's asleep, or in that coma, weird things start happening, like even more weird, So, what was it? I think he was old, well, because they had 2 boys. I think Dalton was the older one, and then the other boy, he was the younger one, right? He would go to school, Josh would go to school because he was a teacher, so that's what his profession. Then Rose Byrne would be your normal stay-at-home mom, and she'd be at home with the baby, and she was a musician, so they played on the fact that she was trying to play piano and everything. And this scene fucking scared the shit out of me, and I just got tingles, thinking about it, right? She's on the baby monitor, and then the monitor's up in the baby's room. So she starts hearing whispers and shit like that, and then all of a sudden she hears the screaming, I want it, no! Oh man, that I'm getting chills because this movie actually really scared the fuck out of me, which is why I love it, because so many different things with it. But anyways, continuing with the story. So we go down to the story. She goes up there. She swears she sees something. She doesn't see anything. And the baby's crying. The baby's fussy. Then she tells Josh about everything. Then just random shit starts happening where she starts seeing... Well, they have this issue where the door kicks open, the alarm goes off, they're trying to figure out what the fuck is going on. She goes in the baby's room, sees a ghost, and then basically that was almost the straw that broke the camel's back, but then they show a scene where it's the next day, Josh goes to work, and he's been staying at work extra late because he's trying to avoid it. Basically, that's what he's doing. And, well, Renee was, talking to the nurse about how to put the feeding tube in. She goes, okay, I got it. She moves back the covers. There's a fucking handprint. It's supposed to be implied as, well, it looks like a bloody handprint, but it's actually, you'll find out in a second, it's actually lipstick, like makeup, like a handprint, but it's more demon-like, right? So she flips the fuck out, tries to call her husband. He's away at work. He finally comes home, and she doesn't want to get out or doesn't want to be home alone, so she's outside of the house, which doesn't make sense if you have kids, right? But anyways... She tells him, hey, where the hell are you? You're not here with me. And he goes, well, I'm just dealing with it my own fucking way. And so she basically throws him the bed sheet with the red handprint. And the next thing they show, they packed up and moved to a new house, right? So as they're at the new house, everything's settled, and then they're trying to move. You meet Barbara Hershey's character, who's Josh's mom. Her name was Lorraine. I'm looking at my notes. I write notes because there is so much damn information and it's just blowing up right now. But anyways, she's getting settled in and everything. Everyone's at school and she puts on a record because she's a musician. She likes music. She goes out there to take out the trash, and then all of a sudden you see like the record scratch, and then it starts playing Tiptoe Through the Tulips by Tiny Tim. And she's tripping out like, what the fuck? So she goes and looks through the window from outside the house as she's throwing out the trash. And she sees, well, when I first watched it was on DVD, it looked like the Lipstick Demon, but it was actually the kid that she sees, because, well, I just spoiled it right there for you. She goes in the house, she sees a ghost and everything, it leads her into a room, and then it jumps out, and it was a fucking little boy ghost, and just runs out laughing. And she starts having, I don't blame her, she had panic attacks because she was seeing apparitions, the shit followed her, So they didn't know what the hell to do. So they ended up moving in with Josh's mom, Lorraine. I think... No, she didn't move in. Lorraine had moved and stayed there with them at that house. Because in part 2... I'll explain that, because part 2 was in a different house. But anyways, Lorraine comes in and she starts noticing things are a little odd, a little different. And they start bringing over a priest. They start thinking, okay, maybe it's, demonic. Like, weird. Like, they don't know. They really don't know. So, Lorraine calls Elise, which you find out later on who she ends up being. She calls Elise, and then they send over 2 characters, Speck and Tucker. They're basically like the ghost hunters and stuff like that, so they go... and I thought it was funny. They're all like, well, why do you need all this equipment? Oh, to weed out the crazies. And it was funny, because they go through the house, and then they start doing the EMP readers, or... the voiceovers and the weird different pictures with, different lenses and stuff like that. And they end up finding out that, there is something supernatural happening. So they get Elise, who ends up being Lynn Shay, and she comes in and she basically says, okay, I'm going to see what's going on. So she starts talking to everybody, figuring out what it is. They go in Dalton's room, and they figured out that it's this red-faced demon that's following him. And Josh and Renee think she's fucking crazy. And then, she basically says, okay, I'm going to tell you straight out. I don't have time. It's getting worse. So let me tell you what it is. Your son has a unique gift. And basically, this is where it ties in the whole franchise. This whole franchise is about having your soul or your spiritual body leave your physical body in a different realm. And so as she explained it, and I'm going to try and explain it like in a way where I can even understand, because I'm like, what the fuck? But when he goes to sleep, he dreams. And when he dreams, he can project his soul out to different things. Well, he got too far, and he got too far to the point where he got led like in a trap, and the red-faced demon, or lipstick demon, caught him, and he wasn't able to go back to his body, which is why he's in the state of the coma. Josh thinks she's crazy and doing all this shit and everything. Then he basically goes into his son's room, and then he has that father moment where he's like, okay, let's try it out. So they start doing different, well, I wouldn't say seance. They were around a table, and she was calling out to the spirits, so kind of a seance. She puts on this mask so that way it kind of puts her into the other world. She called it the further, right? She described the further as not heaven, not hell, but it's purgatory. It's another form of the afterlife where your spiritual body is stuck. So it's basically similar like hell. But anyways, the whole story goes, she tries to figure out what it wants. She's trying to communicate with Dalton. And then basically everything hits the fan, and they find out that Dalton wakes up. Well, not wakes up, he's still asleep. But the lipstick demon, or the red-faced demon, he's holding him, and he's like smacking them around and shit. Then basically they're like, okay, we're going to skip all this bullshit, and we're going to tell you what's happening. And then the truth comes out that Elise had helped Josh when he was a kid, because there was a spirit that was haunting him and everything, and she basically hypnotized him to forget. And he completely forgot about it, so she basically tapped into his spiritual, not spiritual, but she was tapped into how he can able to go to sleep and then basically go into the further. So while that's going on, he basically goes into the further, and he's trying to find his son. And into the further, this is what I love about it. It's all very creepy and everything. It's all dark and black, and he's holding the little lantern going around. Then basically he finds his red door, goes through the red door, and he sees his son after he, searching for him. Then as they are showing that, they show glimpses of the lipstick demon, or the red-faced demon. And that was an awesome fucking character, because there's so many different fan theories. I was watching YouTube when I was doing my, not my review, but I was doing my research and stuff for this. They talk about the different forms, or how the red-faced demon became the red-faced demon, because they talk about in the further, or the purgatory zone, it could have been somebody that was an entertainer from the 20s. He liked puppets, because they showed a lot of that, and maybe he was very flamboyant. Maybe he was an entertainer, because he liked to have nails like etched into his skin and sharpen it, and he stitched and did all this, and he just evolved. That's a pretty cool fan theory. But anyways, back to the story. He sees the red-faced demon, and they break away, they get away. He leads his son to his body, and then the son gets out, and then Josh ends up seeing this woman in black from when he was a kid. And basically tells her, hey, get away from me, get the hell away from me! Then he wakes up. And you think everything's all happy ending and stuff like that. Then you find out that Elise takes a picture, because she sensed something was wrong. And it ends up being the woman in black that was haunting him. So he got stuck in the further while the woman in black took over his body. And then as the picture was taken, he just snapped. Choked Elise, and then boom, that's the end of the first film. Holy shit, that was great. And the way they left it open, you knew they had to do a sequel, right? The first one, it really pushed the boundaries for me, because it had to do with the spiritual outworld of life after death, and it had nothing to do with the Ouija board. It's just, when you're out there, it really questions is there a life after death? And if there is, how is it that there's this middle layer? There's no heaven, there's no hell, but there's this middle layer of purgatory, right? Oh man, that's what's so damn good about it. Anyways, real quick on chapter 2, because I know I've been talking off the first one. Chapter 2 basically picks up right after the first one. So it follows the whole story about how, after everything happened, cops got involved. They think that Josh choked her out, and then you find out glimpses of what happened, about how it's not a woman in black. It's actually a man who tries to dress as a woman because he's a serial killer who kills for his mom because the guy was not all there, right? So the whole story goes is that, Rose Byrne's character, Renee, she has her doubts about him, and they're living at Lorraine's house, which is Josh's mom, trying to see how everything is and trying to get back to normal life. And then all of a sudden, Dalton, he starts telling Renee, like, hey, I see Daddy talking to somebody. It's really weird. And they start seeing all the same apparitions. And as this is going on, the woman in black, or the guy who's dressed as a woman in black, his name is Parker Crane. And he basically wanted to take over Josh because his mother, who was very abusive, and forced him from being a man into a girl and took away his childhood. And he always wanted Josh because being in Josh, he could have a childhood, he could have life, right? So he finally took him over, and little bits and pieces, it starts putting it all together like, whoa, okay. As everything's going on, apparitions, the piano playing by itself and stuff like that. Later on, you find out that it was actually Josh trying to signal to his wife that he's still stuck in the further. And he's in purgatory, and he's getting weaker because his soul's away from his actual body. So, Elise is gone now in this one, but they still bring her back as a spirit later on. They call her best friend Carl, and then it talks about everything that happened when Josh was young, when he was a kid. About how he had that parasite ghost following him, and it shows a young Elise, his mom when she was young, and then Carl, and then it starts off with what's going on currently. So there's a lot of little flashbacks here and there. But anyways, Carl, he comes in, and he's a character who's trying to figure out what's going on, because Specs and Tucker, they're trying to reach out to him, because Elise is giving him basically all the tools. She kind of leads him into her house, into her special basement room where she has all the readings and all the ghost stuff and things. They find the tape that they recorded of when Josh was a kid. And when they looked through it and everything, they figured, okay, what the hell? That's when Carl got involved. Then they asked Lorraine, like, hey, do you know what this is or anything? They're trying to tell us to go to a hospital. So they go to a hospital, and they never said where Lorraine was, if she was a doctor or anything. But she remembered the patient Parker Crane because he had this weird attraction to her son when she would bring him to work. And then it builds up this whole story about how Parker Crane always had this obsession with Josh. And he died and his apparition left and all that. And then little by little they kind of lead them in, Specs, Tucker, Carl, and Lorraine, into Parker Crane's house to see who he is. Well, it was actually all a trap by his mom, who's still a ghost haunting him. And while she's haunting them, trying to get them killed and everything, she's basically haunting Parker Crane in Josh's body and saying, okay, you have to kill for them, you have to kill for them. And little by little, Parker, he starts losing his teeth. He starts dying a little bit at a time. And she basically explained the point, well, you're dying inside that skin because you haven't killed. You're not doing what you do. You got to be evil. And he doesn't want to do it. But then later on, once they figure out that it's Parker Crane inside Josh's body, they said, oh shit, we got to tranquilize him. So they tried to tranquilize him. They tried to keep the kids away. And then it just built it to this big climax, like really good into the story arc, where they're all at Lorraine's house. They try to take out Josh. And Specs and Tucker, they basically get knocked out with Carl, and then Renee comes home, and basically they were setting up Specs and Tucker and Carl to go and try and knock him out so they can go into the further and pull him out. They didn't do that, and basically Josh set him up for a big old trap. He tried to attack them, locked Lorraine in the room, and then Renee, she basically was knocked out. And then the kids saved her. Then they go downstairs and hide into the laundry room as Josh is like trying to break in. Little by little, it shows that, and then it shows what's going on in the further with Josh and Carl, because he's inside the further, showing Josh how to get back home. While that's all going on, then Dalton says, hey, I can bring Daddy back. Let me go back to sleep. So he goes to the corner, and he built this, well, him and his brother, they had this invention, the string with the cans on the ends. He ties it around his waist, goes in the further, finds his dad, and brings him back. And as he's doing that, Elise and them, they're at Parker Crane's house into the further. And Elise, she finally gets into Parker's memories and defeats the mother of Parker Crane. And then when she defeated the mother, then Parker Crane basically leaves his soul, then Josh goes back in, and then happy ending, right? Then they kind of continue and wink the story that Specs and Tucker, they're more like ghost hunters and help people. And then you find out that there's other people that have this special gift. And then they build it up to where they say she sees the lipstick demon, and then she's like, oh my god. And then that's the end of part 2. Now, I know that was a lot that I explained, and I probably got you all confused. But if you haven't seen the movie, I explained it. But for what I would recommend is watch the movie, because you would get a better understanding watching it, right? But what makes this movie so special, right? You have the different characters, you have this whole different world of the purgatory, the further, what makes it special is the fact that it opens it up. And it's just, you can go from like 4 or 5 different stories, which is what they did in chapter 3 and chapter 4. And eventually, chapter 4 built up to the beginning of part 1, which was pretty cool. Like, they completed it. They did the whole Saw trilogy deal with it, you know, because that's James Wan and Leigh Whannell's style. And what I love about this, and I've even watched different people's opinions of what they thought about the Further and Insidious, you know, movie line. Well, the whole, not movie line, but movie franchise, right? So, an interesting one was obviously the Lipstick Demon, or the Red-Faced Demon. And why do I say Lipstick Demon? Because the part where you see his handprint, it's not blood. And you see the whole actual demon, he's all black except his face. That's why they came up with the fan theory, hey, maybe he was an entertainer, you know? Maybe he was kind of flamboyant. You know, they never really explained it too much in chapter 1 or chapter 2. But it was actually pretty cool. The fact that he was the most evil thing in that world. And then you find out later on in chapter 3 and chapter 4, which I won't get into too much, is that there's different levels of the Further. There's like different worlds in that purgatory. And the Red-Faced Demon, he's basically... The Red-Faced Demon, he's the ruler of everything. He's like the most cruelest, meanest, because he doesn't try to go into different people's bodies. If they astrosize is what they call it, or if they have their soul out in their dream world. He doesn't try to kidnap their body. He basically kidnaps you in that world and then brings you in his lair and then tortures you. Which is kind of fucked up, but it's actually a pretty cool storyline because they were able to carry it on for so long, and then even with chapter 4 coming out, and then they built the franchise off of it. But chapter 1 and chapter 2 were basically, you know, the meat and potatoes of this franchise. And you wouldn't have it as good as it was if you didn't have James Wan or Leigh Whannell. And the whole thing started because James Wan wanted to do a paranormal film. He didn't get a chance to do a paranormal film at the time when this film came out. Obviously, later on he went on to do Conjuring and do his own thing. But anyways, he wanted to do a paranormal film. And him and Leigh Whannell, they collaborated like they normally do. And they came up with the story of Insidious. And Insidious, back to what I was saying earlier in the beginning of this episode, is the modern day version of The Exorcist. And I'm going to keep getting a lot of bullshit on this. And the reason why I say this is because look at the similarities between them, right? Even though Dalton wasn't possessed, he basically, his soul left his body and he was in a different world, right? The original Exorcist, she was possessed, right? And, you know, you had a priest who knew demonology and all that stuff and how to pull out demons out of the body and things like that. It's very similar to it. But if you think about it, Insidious is a modern take on what it was scary back in the day. Which, you know, it just blows my mind thinking about it. And, like, it's... I'm so tongue-tied over it, I don't even know what to say sometimes. But anyways, as I was saying, modern day version of it, hands down. And a lot of people will make an argument saying, well, it doesn't involve a Ouija board, doesn't involve demons, doesn't involve... Well, it does involve one demon, and it does involve spirits. But what I like about it is that James Wan and Leigh Whannell, they wrote it in a way where you could see the winks what they were doing. And purgatory, it's... The way they describe the purgatory or the Further is that it's an in-between place. In some cultures, even in certain religions, they believe that you can get stuck in purgatory, whether you're good or whether you're bad. And you're stuck there until something happens, you know, or until you sense something. If somebody like Dalton, if he goes in there and wonders, because that's basically what they crave. They don't know that they're dead, but they are dead, and they crave life. And I believe that's more a take on the dark side of some religions and some cultural things, but it's very unique, you know, because this film still holds up. It really does. The fact that it's modernized, you can, you know, I'm gonna say this. You can watch this film probably 10, 15 years down the road and still be scared the shit out of, just like how The Exorcist is. Why? Because it's modernized. Because it's a different take on the whole supernatural thing. It really is. And I I have a fond appreciation of it. At first, when I saw Insidious, I'm gonna give you my honest opinion. It was but then I went back and watched it a little bit more and a little bit more, till finally I was just watching this movie on repeat all the time, the first and the second one. And I didn't realize how scary as fuck this film could be. It really is. Especially the scene where Renee, she's home alone, she starts sensing things, and then you hear the shit on the baby monitor. You think you're alone, and then you hear that, I want it now, screaming. Just like, whoa. And then, I didn't even get into this part about the red face or lipstick demon, but the music was all done by Joseph Bashira. Joseph Bashira, who also not only did the music, but he was the red-faced demon, which was badass. Because this film, when they were building it and everything, they obviously were on a very tight budget, and they knocked it out of the park with the budget that they had. And that's what I love about this film, because some people will say it's an independent film. I wouldn't go as far as say independent. I would go as far as say that they did what they could on the budget, and they basically hit a home run with it. I mean, everything down from the effects to how it looked, to the makeup, everything. And Joseph Bashira, he also worked with James Wan in other number of films. He was the demon in The Conjuring, the first Conjuring. Bashira, obviously, because his name, which was a pretty cool wink. And that's what's cool about James Wan and Lee Winnell. They throw in little winks here and there, in all their films, whether it's with Saw or whether it's with Dead Silence or, anything. They throw it all in there, little winks. And this film, the first one, like I said, it will hold up 10 years down the road. Quote me if I'm wrong. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think. I mean, honestly, this film is going to be, well, not gonna, it already is, in my opinion, the newer version, well, I can't say newer version, the modern version of The Exorcist. But it doesn't involve the Ouija board. It doesn't involve pissing off, demons, spirits. You got one demon that rules them all. And he's supposed to be the scariest, creepiest shit. And it's, wow. Damn good storytelling. It really is, And the whole concept with the woman in black, I love that concept. I really did love it, because in the first film, they couldn't find a woman with the same kind of creases on the face. So they actually had a real man play the woman in black in the first one. And this is how they got the idea for part 2. They said, okay, well, if it's a man dressed as a woman in black, why can't we play off that in part 2? Which is what they did, and damn, they hit a home run with that one, because that's creepy as shit. You find out why he wore the black wedding dress, the black veil, what he did and how he tortured his victims when he was alive. And they showed flashbacks. They never showed like him actually chopping them up and shit, but they showed and implied it, which it goes with that old Hitchcock notion, less is more. If you have to use your imagination and think about it and it's scary as shit, then it's going to be scary as shit for you. You know what I'm saying? But hope you enjoyed this episode on Insidious. I know I do a lot more slasher, I do a lot more iconic horror, but I know everyone's been coming at me and letting me know, like, hey, you haven't done Supernatural since the first episode. So I figured, okay, I'm going to go on a Supernatural binge and bring some good Supernatural films to you. And so hopefully I've done that. Hope you all enjoyed this episode, because the next one, episode 19, I hope you all can float down to episode 19. Wink, wink. So you'll have to tune in to my teasers and everything like that. See what episode I'm cooking in the next one, right? Ooh. And also, too, guys, I want to give a shout out to everybody that's been following my show, everybody that tunes in. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you guys. So thanks again for everything, and thank you for tuning into the SaWGuy Podcast. And as always, once I'm done, I'm out.